know what it is. Gone are the days where a family can survive on just one paycheck. Every day it seems things are more and more out of control, yet only 1 in a million understand why. You are about to discover the system that is ultimately responsible for most of the inequality in our world today. The powers that be do not want you to know about this, as this system is what has kept them at the top of the financial food chain for the last 100 years. Learning this will change your life because it'll change the choices that you make. If enough people learn it, it'll change the world because it'll change the system. For this is the biggest hidden secret of money. Never in human history have so many been plundered by so few, and it's all accomplished through this, the biggest scam in the history of mankind. They say that money doesn't grow on trees, but the truth is that the modern banking system creates currency far faster than trees can grow. Most people don't have a clue how currency is created. Economists and bankers make it sound so complex that people think they can't understand it. But I'm going to strip our monetary system down to its essence so that you can see the scam behind the curtain and just how it affects you. Every modern society creates currency in pretty much the same way. But since the US dollar is the majority of the world's currency, I'm going to use the United States as our example. It all starts when some politician says, "Vote for me and I'll make sure the government provides you more free stuff than my opponent will." But there's no such thing as a free lunch. So to provide that supposedly free stuff, the politicians vote for the country to spend more than its income. This is called deficit spending. To pay for that deficit spending, the Treasury borrows currency by issuing a bond. So what's a bond? If you think about it, a bond is really nothing but a glorified IOU. It's a pretty piece of paper with numbers printed on it that says, "Loan me $1 trillion today, and I promise over a 10-year period I'm going to pay you back that $1 trillion plus interest." But what you need to understand is that Treasury bonds are our national debt. These glorified IOUs are to be paid back by you and I and our descendants through future taxation. Therefore, when the government issues a bond, it steals prosperity out of the future so that it can spend it today. The Treasury then holds a bond auction, and the world's largest banks show up and compete to buy part of our national debt and make a profit on it by earning interest. You'll notice that as we move through this process, the big banks are there, taking a cut every step of the way. This isn't by chance, as you'll see shortly. Then, through a shell game called open market operations, the banks get to sell some of those bonds to the Federal Reserve at a profit. To pay for the bonds, the Federal Reserve opens up its big old checkbook and writes bad, bogus, counterfeit checks that should bounce because they're drawn on an account that always has a zero balance. There isn't 1 penny in there. To quote from the Boston Federal Reserve, "When you or I write a check, there must be sufficient funds in our account to cover that check. But when the Federal Reserve writes a check, there is no bank deposit on which that check is drawn. When the Federal Reserve writes a check, it is creating money." The Fed then hands those checks to the banks, and at this point, currency springs into existence. The banks then take that currency and buy more bonds at the next Treasury auction. But what is a check? A check is also an IOU. When you write a check, you're making a note that says, "Here's my IOU for cash. All you have to do is go to the bank and pick it up." Now, it's very, very important that you understand this process, because we're going to come back later and show you the devastating effect this has on you. The Treasury issues IOUs, bonds. The banks then buy those IOUs with currency. The Federal Reserve then writes IOUs, checks, and hands them to the banks in exchange for the Treasury's IOUs, the bonds. And currency is created. So what's really happening is the Federal Reserve and the Treasury are just swapping IOUs, using the banks as middlemen, and abracadabra, presto, currency magically springs into existence. This process repeats and repeats over and over again, enriching the banks and indebting the public by raising the national debt. The end result is that there's a buildup of bonds at the Federal Reserve and currency at the Treasury. This process is also where all paper currency comes from. The Federal Reserve and the government mistakenly call it base money because they didn't watch episode 1 of this series and they don't know the difference between money and currency. But I will correctly refer to it as base currency because it is not money, It is currency, and as we've learned, there is a big difference. Money has to be a store of value and maintain its purchasing power over long periods of time. We learned in episode 1 that earlier in our history, our paper currency was just a claim check. It was a representation for real money of intrinsic value, the gold and silver that was held on deposit at the Treasury. You could walk into any bank and slap your currency, like say a $20 bill, on the counter and redeem it for real money, a $20 gold piece. But now, this base currency that's piling up back here is really nothing but a receipt or a claim check on an IOU, that bond. So it's really nothing but a supply of numbers. The Treasury then deposits the newly created currency into the various branches of the government, and the politicians say, "Hey, thanks for that." And the government does some deficit spending on public works, social programs, and war. The government employees, contractors, and soldiers then deposit their pay in the banks. Now this may come as a shock to you, but when you deposit your currency with the bank, you're not actually depositing it into an account to be safely held in trust for you. Instead, you're actually loaning the bank your currency, and within certain legal limits, they can do with it pretty much anything they please. This includes gambling in the stock market and loaning it out, at a profit, of course. Now this is where the machine of currency creation really gets cranking, because this is where something called fractional reserve lending comes into play. Fractional reserve lending is exactly what it says. The banks are allowed to reserve only a fraction of your deposit and loan the rest out. Although reserve ratios may vary, I'm going to use a 10% reserve ratio as our example. If you deposit $100 in your account, the bank can legally take $90 of it and loan it out without telling you. The bank must hold $10 of your deposit in reserve just in case you want some of it. These reserves are called vault cash. But why does your bank account still say you have $100 if the bank has stolen $90 of it? Because the bank left IOUs it created, called bank credit, in its place. Now I know this sounds crazy, but here it is in black and white from the Fed. Commercial banks create checkbook money when they grant a loan simply by adding new deposit dollars in accounts on their books in exchange for a borrower's IOU. These are nothing but numbers that the banks type into their computers. And even though these bank credit IOU numbers are very different from base currency numbers, because they only exist in computers, they are still currency. So now there is $190 in existence. Now the reason people take out loans from the banks is to buy something. They're going to buy a house or a car or something like that. So the borrower takes the $90 that the bank loaned to him from your account, and he pays the seller of the item. But then the seller deposits that currency into his account, and his bank loans out 90% of that and leaves bank credit numbers in its place. So now there's $271 in existence. This process repeats and repeats until under a 10% reserve ratio, an initial deposit of just $100 can create up to $1,000 of bank credit, all backed by $100 of vault cash, just 10%. But as I said, reserve ratios vary wildly. On some deposits, it's 10%, on others, it's 3%, and on some forms of deposits, reserve requirements are 0. The result is that the expansion of the currency supply by the banks is far greater than even this example would lead you to believe. So once again, when currency is deposited in the banks get to lend it out, and then it gets redeposited and relent, redeposited and relent, redeposited and relent over and over again, creating bank credit all the way. This is where the vast majority of our currency supply comes from. In fact, 92 to 96% of all currency in existence is created not by the government, but here in the banking system. Now, massive amounts of currency spewing into society may at first sound like a fun idea. That is, until you remember one of the most important hidden secrets of money from episode 1, that the prices of everyday goods and services act as a sponge on an expanding currency supply. The more currency we have, the more prices rise. This is where inflation comes from. The true definition of inflation is an expansion of the currency supply. Rising prices are merely the symptom. So our entire currency supply is nothing but a couple of bucks whipped up in this hocus-pocus scam where the Treasury and the Federal Reserve swap glorified IOUs. and a bunch of numbers that the banks just type into their computers. That's it. That's our entire currency supply. It's nothing but a supply of numbers. Some of them printed, most of them typed, and there is nothing else. But if you thought that was crazy, get ready to enter the twilight zone of modern economics. We work for some of that currency supply. True wealth is your time, but we trade away moments of our lives, hour by hour, day by day, and year by year, for numbers that somebody printed on pieces of paper or just typed into a computer. Now those numbers represent our blood, sweat, tears, labor, ideas, and talent. We are what gives the currency its value. But here comes the really cruel joke. We work hard so that we can save some of that currency, so that we can pay the tax collector in the United States, it's known as the IRS. They then turn it over to the Treasury so that the Treasury can pay the principal plus interest on that bond that the Federal Reserve bought with a check drawn on an account that has nothing in it. Now let's do a recap on this section, because this is where the system begins to rob you and I on a massive scale. Much of our taxes are not used for schools, roads, and public services, but to pay interest on bonds that the Federal Reserve bought with a check drawn on an account that has nothing in it. The Federal Reserve is committing fraud. But here's one of the biggest secrets of them all. Before the establishment of the Federal Reserve, there was no need for personal income tax. The Federal Reserve was created in 1913, and that very same year, the Constitution was amended to allow income tax. Do you really think this was just a coincidence? Ask yourself how much income tax you've paid over your lifetime. Much of it has been silently siphoned away into the hands of those who own the system. Yes, this system has owners. Who they are is an even bigger secret that we'll get to shortly. But first, we need to understand the mumbo-jumbo of the so-called debt ceiling. It's all based on a huge paradox. There was interest due on that bond, and there was interest due on every one of those loans that the banks made. That means that there is interest due on every dollar in existence. Let me ask you something. If you borrow the very first dollar into existence, and that's the only dollar that exists on the planet, but you promise to pay it back plus another dollar's worth of interest, where do you get the second dollar to pay the interest? The answer is that you have to borrow that one into existence and promise to pay it back with interest as well. So now there are $2 in existence, but you owe $4, and so on and so on. The result is there's never enough currency to pay the debt. There is always more debt in the system than there is currency in existence to pay the debt. Therefore, the whole system is impossible. It is finite. It will come to an end one day. What would happen if the government stopped borrowing to do deficit spending? Are the payments on those treasury bonds going to stop? What would happen if the public stopped borrowing and going deeper into debt? Are your house and car payments going to stop? No. There is a payment due every month on the principal plus the interest on every dollar in existence, and those payments do not stop. If we stop borrowing, then no new currency is created to replace the currency that we used to make those payments. Whether you're making a payment on a loan or paying tax to make a payment on a bond, the portion of the payment that goes to pay off the principal extinguishes that portion of the debt. But the debt also extinguishes the currency. Currency and debt are like matter and antimatter. When they meet, they annihilate each other. If we just pay off the principal only on all the loans and bonds that exist, the entire currency supply just vanishes. So if we don't go deeper into debt every year, look what happens. The whole thing goes into a deflationary collapse under the weight of those payments. Politicians and pundits alike talk about balancing the budget, paying down the debt, and living within our means. They don't understand that that is deflationary. It is impossible to do under our current monetary system without collapsing the whole economy. This is why any talk of a debt ceiling is not only ridiculous, it's delusional. The system is designed to require ever-increasing levels of debt just to continue, and that's why politicians will always kick the can down the road and raise this so-called debt ceiling over and over again until the whole system finally collapses under its own weight. In other words, they don't want it to collapse on their watch. The founding fathers of the United States knew the dangers of central banking and fought to free themselves from this very thing. The Revolutionary War started out as a tax revolt, but now we must pay tax just to have a monetary system. Having just suffered through the hyperinflation of the continental dollar, which was printed into oblivion to finance the Revolutionary War, they understood the dangers of fiat currency and debt-based monetary systems. So to protect future generations from institutional theft and out-of-control government, they wrote into the Constitution that only gold and silver can be money for the simple fact that you can't print them. Our current system is not only unconstitutional, but it robs us of the liberty and prosperity our forefathers fought and died for. We are all feeling the effects of ignoring the Constitution right now. By forcing more currency into circulation, our purchasing power is diluted. Inflation is a slow and insidious stealth tax that is simply the result of this debt-based monetary system. This system empowers and benefits those who create the currency and receive it first, as they get to spend it into circulation before it has an effect on the economy. They're stealing purchasing power from you and transferring it to the banks and the government every hour of every day because of this false monetary system. And it's not like the people at the top don't know this. To quote the Federal Reserve, the decrease in purchasing power incurred by the holders of money due to inflation imparts gains to the issuers of money. This is a fraud. It is a pyramid scheme, it is a Ponzi scheme, it's a scam, and it's a lie. Our entire monetary system is nothing but a form of legalized theft. But here's the biggest con job of them all. The Federal Reserve is not federal, it has stockholders. There is no federal agency that has stockholders. What's a stockholder? A share of stock represents a percentage of ownership in a corporation. So the stockholders are the owners of that corporation. Therefore, the Federal Reserve is a private corporation with owners. And you can see it for yourself if you go to the Federal Reserve's website, and it will say, the stockholders receive an annual dividend of 6%. Now we know that the stock in the Federal Reserve was originally issued to the largest banks in the United States. But because of mergers and acquisitions through the years, you can't actually trace who owns the stock in the Federal Reserve. That's a very closely guarded secret. My guess would be that the owners are those primary dealers, the banks that get to make a profit by selling part of our national debt, those bonds, to the Federal Reserve, who buys them with a check from nothing. Then we pay tax to pay the principal and the interest on those bonds so that the Federal Reserve can pay the banks a 6% dividend. Don't be alarmed if you don't quite comprehend the deception of this system at first glance. Very few people do. It is purposely complex. The economist John Maynard Keynes once wrote, "By this means, government may secretly and unobserved confiscate the wealth of the people, and not one man in a million will detect the theft." I believe that presented correctly, anyone can understand this system, regardless of how complex it is. So let's do a recap and break it down even more. The way the system works is that, step 1, the government creates glorified IOUs. These bonds increase our national debt and put the public on the hook to pay it back. Step 2, IOUs are swapped to create currency. The Treasury sells the bonds to the banks. The banks then turn around and sell our national debt at a profit to the Federal Reserve, which they probably own. The Federal Reserve then opens its checkbook that doesn't have a penny in it and buys those IOUs with IOUs that it writes, checks, on a checking account that has a zero balance. Then they give those checks to the banks and currency just Hello, 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 hello. Sweetness, we got sound coming in. But do we have it coming out? I guess not. Hello. Let's see. Line in, line in. Line in. Hello. I guess I can't test myself. See if I can be heard at all. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. All right, let's see. I can be okay. Now, this guy is talking about the banks, the banking system. Springs into existence, and then the whole process repeats. This results in a buildup of bonds at the Federal Reserve and currency at the Treasury, which is really just a supply of numbers. The Treasury then deposits the numbers in the various branches of the government, and we get to step 3. The government spends the numbers on promises, public works, social programs, and war. Then the government employees, contractors, and soldiers deposit their pay into the banks, and we get to step 4, where the banks multiply the numbers by magically inventing more IOUs through fractional reserve lending, where they steal a portion of everyone's deposit and lend it out. That currency gets redeposited, and then a portion is stolen again, and the process repeats over and over, magnifying the currency supply exponentially. Then we work for some of those numbers, which brings us to step 5, where our numbers are taxed. We pay tax to the IRS, who then turns our numbers over to the Treasury, so the Treasury can pay the principal plus the interest on bonds that were purchased by the Federal Reserve with a check from nothing. Then we get to step 6, the debt ceiling delusion. The system is designed to require ever-increasing levels of debt and will eventually collapse under its own weight because politicians always kick the can down the road. They don't want it to collapse on their watch. And finally, step 7, the secret owners take their cut. The world's largest banks own the Federal Reserve. Those banks make a profit selling our national debt to the Fed. They make a profit when the Fed pays them interest on the reserves held at the Fed, and the Fed pays them a 6% dividend on their ownership of the Fed. So, what are we getting at this point? Honestly, there's only one thing to say. The government, the Federal Reserve, the creation of the dollar bill, all comes around to taking money from us. Now, that being said, our dreams are not over. We have more things that we can do. We work every day for a little bit of that piece of the pie, and as soon as you think that you're no longer making money for your own time, you're making money for your ideas, for your value, you have to realize that it's still taking time to make that money. So no matter what,
you're spending time and using your own value to try to take a piece of that. Try and take a piece of that pie. I was thinking about it today. How this banking system right here, starting at step 1, the government going to the treasury, going to an IOU, back around to a bank. Here's where the bank gets its piece. The bank gets the money, the IOU, the number, and then says, hey, to us, we can give you this much money. You put down a deposit to begin a loan where you pay back more money than you borrowed. But at the same time, that money that you had to put in, the deposit, is divided up. The bank will take 90% of it, hold it for the next loan, and use it for other things. And the other 10% is what you can get back. It's literally making a profit out of nothing but the credit it has. What he said before, bank credit. And this circle continues to grow. It seems like it's more complicated than it is. Right here you can see the 2 outs it goes to. And the Treasury of America, where the dollar bill comes from, sends out IOUs to the Federal Reserve, which goes back around to the banks and sent out to other shareholders and other big-time money makers. And then it sends out IOUs to the regular banks, which goes to us, which goes back around to the Treasury. Such a weird mix, but such a clever way to get people back in the 1913, where there wasn't YouTube to hear this stuff. Nonetheless, I digress. I was thinking about how to take my chunk out of that today. And I had this brilliant idea. What if I get a loan for a house? And my first loan would be for a mortgage. I want to get into a house of my own. If I put down $10,000, if I can get $10,000, and I get into the house, and I live there for a year, while I live there for that year, piece by piece, I put together a more technologically advanced house. Sell it for an even higher price than what I bought it for, and take those dividends, pay off the loan that I have, and just try and be there. Try and do the cycle over and over again, but I can't take that chunk. I can't do that. Even if there's value in creating a nicer home for somebody, that's the heartless side of it. It's like trying to take my piece, I have to crap on somebody. Or I find a problem that needs a solution and try to create a solution. We're talking about a worldwide problem. Elon Musk making the huge value out of what used to be nothing for him. if it's weird. Oh, there we go. I have to be up close like this for this microphone. I'm sorry. But that value, Elon Musk started PayPal, or he was an affiliate or a partner or whatever, helped create the banking system of the internet for what at the time was the only thing. Sold that for millions of dollars back in the 2000s, and from there started to plan something huge, which he found a problem with the oil industry and wanted to take it over. Got popular and got real smart with engineers and everything, and created Tesla cars. From there, it was just expansion after expansion, trying to solve problems. It was a smart way to make money. But what his thoughts were, solving problems. Huge. I never thought of it that way. It's really hard to think about what is the problem we need, but there's so many out there. What is the problem we need to fix? Another example, Jeff Bezos. That's it, Jeff Bezos. He found a way to make shipping easier online. It did all kind of circle back to the big money makers being online. Or they're just got a hold on the economy with what they have to offer. Yeah, it'll be tough to find something else. Something else to make money off of, but all day today, I just needed the inspiration, and I found it. I found the inspiration in a few YouTube videos. But the question is, can I stay committed enough to continue? I find that I don't have a terrible much to offer, but I do have some things to offer, and most of it is trying to find peace in myself and sharing that, being open to the world. And I find peace in myself when I'm self-aware. I try to be as self-aware of my own problems as I can be. Alright, let me pull up another YouTube video for you that I watched today. This was of what seemed to be a TED Talk. Something like that. Escaping the rat race. What schools failed
in 2003, professional boxer and heavyweight champion Mike Tyson filed for bankruptcy with $30 million in debt, despite accumulating over $300 million during the course of his career, which poses a great question about money itself. Because a great deal of our actions or our motivations in life have an underlying desire or need to acquire it. But what's the point in acquiring it if the great issue seems to be with our ability to manage it?
Americans now have the highest credit card debt in history. Translation: you didn't learn anything!
Debt is an invisible burden being carried by the country's most vulnerable.
Of course, these statistics are reflective of the UK and the US, but consider for a moment your own attitude towards money and how money exists in your own life. What is money to you? Does it it seem to enter your life and immediately leave once you have it? Has it ever placed you in a vulnerable position? A vulnerability that drew you closer to a get-rich-quick scheme or a guru telling you that you can get rich if you just bought their course? Whilst my entire channel aims to tackle these topics to some degree or another, I realize that our perceptions of money are sometimes more crucial than our ability to generate it, especially when our very brains are wired in such a way that prevents us from being financially sensible. Does it really matter if you're earning more than 6 figures a year if by the end of that year you have nothing left to show for it? Where is the disconnect? It's time we solve that mystery. And not only that, but explore a better framework for understanding money, a framework commonly taught in personal finance but oftentimes missed in formal education.
The money trap. What a beautiful thing. These guys know it. They know what's going
What is
on.
money? Or rather, what does money represent? When you make a purchase from Amazon, when you're paid for your time working at a job, what is the significance of money in these transactions? Money is commonly defined as a medium of exchange, an instrument that facilitates the sale, purchase, or trade of goods between parties. But I don't think this says much about what money actually represents. I think a better way of looking at money is an expression of value. You hand over a certain amount of money to purchase something because you perceive its value to be equivalent to the amount of money that you handed over. Of course, the price is often not determined by you as an individual, but the market as a whole. But hone in on this one point. Money equals value. Why is that so important? Because often we give money a moral significance.
A quote that I'm sure you've heard: money is the root of all evil.
We look at someone who seems to have a large amount of wealth and think, they got lucky. Who did they take advantage of to get to that position? Who had to lose in order for them to gain? And never, what value was created in order to generate that money? Understanding that money is simply value is the best way to understanding that money is not necessarily evil, nor does it make a person evil. Sure, there are things such as scammers who convince you that what they have to sell is worth value, but that doesn't say much about money more so than it does their own morals. Money simply opens your options and broadens your horizons. The choices you make with that money have everything to do with your own moral dispositions. So, money is an expression of value. Now what? How does this change the reality of a person living paycheck to paycheck?
That's a good point. Another way of thinking about money is the value that they bestow. I'm going to switch videos real quick. Let me just keep this one open. Now, all I can do is say, people that are smarter with money is who I listen to, is who I inspire to be. This next guy that I watched had a really good point of the value of what value really is and what your value is and what you're worth. He explains it very well. Now, the video we were just watching, explaining the value of money, I think it's that video where he gets into what is the balance between your money income and your consumerism. Such a huge point. I mean, if you make $2 million, who's to say that you don't just blow it all because you have a consumer problem? And that's huge. That's a huge stepping stone to get started. From that point is finding a problem and solving it. Using the money that you save through safe consumerism, building up to it. I'm still working on that part. I consume like crazy. And it's not a problem, it's not a problem until it is a problem. Until I have something that I want to invest in. Like, I like to say that doing this stream on Twitch is an investment to get better and bigger things. My huge ultimate goal is to be able to live in a house with an office that I can just play music, play video games, and do it in front of you guys to help you to enjoy it as much as I am enjoying it when I'm doing it. That's all we can do is see the value in those things. Build a team. This next guy, oh my gosh. The way he talks about what the value is and how to outsmart it with leverage, freaking genius. But like I say, these are words coming from people who actually might actually make a good income. And I figure you guys can watch it with me. What I was thinking. How to get so rich. You question the meaning of making money. I mean, come on. The title of that is just killer. 2.4 million views. What a crazy guy. This is the TED Talk.
Completely insane. Yes? Okay. You're going to have to hear it anyways. I was able to take home more in a year than the CEOs of McDonald's, IKEA, Ford, Motorola, and Yahoo combined as a kid in his 20s for over half a decade. There you go. Which resulted in $200 million in portfolio revenue as of today. We crossed $100 million by age 33. And to be honest, no one's more surprised than I am about this outcome. And so me expressing this will create envy in some people. It will create anger in others, skepticism in most, confusion in old people, and inspire a select few.
I hope that this doesn't create anger or envy. The idea of showing you this is to help inspire, and yeah, you can be skeptical too. But mainly let it inspire, let it teach. I'll continue.
And so the select few, you are who I'm making this for. Everyone else you can chill. But you are the people that I'm making this for.
The inspired.
There we go. So, who wants to hear about some stuff that can shortcut their path to material success so they can ponder the purpose of achieving it to begin with? All right. So,
I'm part
we're
of
gonna
it
cover
now.
3 things today. This is fresh from this morning, right off the press.
3 things.
Number 1, how making money really works. Number 2, why new stuff is making you poor. Number 3, why better is the way. You're like, that doesn't make sense yet. It will. Said simply, who wants to make lots of money? Funny thing, what you're watching right now is not my original presentation. I actually changed it the very last minute the night before. I went out to get dessert. A bunch of people from the event were in town going to the place
In Las
that I was
Vegas.
by accident. As soon as I left the frozen yogurt lounge, which is where I was like, the presentation I have for tomorrow isn't what these people need. And so I spent that night and all morning making an entirely new presentation, which is what you are watching. Who believes that you have to work hard to make money? Who believes that no one can outwork them?
I don't
You're going to see where I'm
that.
going to go with this. Well, I'm going to attempt to prove you wrong. The reason this is so important is that all of us claim, or I have heard, who here has seen a guru on the internet say, no one can outwork me? Who has heard people say that on podcasts, make Instagram posts about it, whatever? It actually drives me fucking bananas. And it drives me bananas because it teaches the wrong lesson. So, how can we claim that we work every day, and yet we can't even define the word? So how do you define work? The science definition is work equals force times distance. Problem with that is it's not very useful for knowledge workers. Most of us are not actually doing manual labor, not useful. The second way is that you can think about it in terms of inputs of time, right? Like, is that how hard you work? No one can outwork me. I work longer hours. Do you think you're the only person who works 16, 18 hours every day? Like, go to China. I don't even know if anyone in America can say it. I'm being dead serious. So that's why when I see these things, it just drives me fucking nuts. So the problem with that is that many people work all the hours they're awake. And if you suggest working more hours, then you're sleeping less, and I don't think that's a good idea for knowledge workers. So why can no one outwork you again? Right, so everyone's working those hours. So then the next one is like effort. That's how no one can outwork me. No one's going to try harder than me. So you want participation trophies. Is this how you want your employees to think that they're working hard? I mean, not me. I wouldn't want that. So if it's not force times distance to define what work is, and if it's not the amount of time we're putting into the work that we do, and it's not the effort that we are expending or how hard we try, then what's work? We have to get clear on it, because if that's what we have to do to make money, then we gotta know what we're actually trying to fucking do. So here's Alex's definition.
Now, before he gets there, before the guy was talking about money is the value of something. When you talk about work and the amount of money you're making, work equals value. The amount of work you can do equals the value of you. And this guy is explaining what the work is, so just enjoy.
Work equals outputs. Fancy image. Outputs equal volume times leverage. In plain speak, number of times you do something times how much you get out of each time you do it. How do we work faster? Work rate equals that same thing divided by time. Plain speak, output per minute of time. That is how you work faster. Which means that the hardest working man in the world can be objectively measured. That guy is the hardest guy working in the world. In 2022, he had $140 billion in net worth. For context, that's more than Bill Gates did his entire career in 1 year. Think about that for a second. And then next year, he did the exact same amount again. FYI, that's $2 billion a week. So output divided by time, there's the time, 1 year, there's the output. He's the hardest working guy. So who's going to be the 2027 champ? The point of me doing this is that I hope it's somebody here. Who would like to be the 2027 champ? All right, let's rock. So if you want to be it, then please pay attention. This will help you. So how can we get more output? Which in the game of business is enterprise value. It's how much shit is worth. Outputs, right? We have this one, and now I've got a nice flexi arm. Volume is the number of times we move the lever. I literally made all these images this morning. All right, I'm very, very proud of them. All right, volume is the number of times you move the lever. The leverage is the length of the lever itself that you're using. The outputs is how much you can lift on the other side. So let's look at a couple examples. You guys can just shout it when I say, just say high or low. So high or low?
Low.
Low. High or low? High. High or low?
Low.
Very high.
Oh, very high, yeah.
The reason I put this one in here is that at a certain point, it's not about how strong the person is. It all depends on how much leverage
You see the scrawny arm? Love it.
Now, high or low? Volume times 1,000, the thing's just as long as the other one. Highest, yes. So now that we understand what work is, you can either do more activity or you can do it with more leverage to get more output. Doing more is capped by time and physical ability. How much you get, aka leverage, is uncapped. No cap. I learned that. Gen Z, there we go. Now, fun fact, Warren Buffett took home $500 million in dividends last year from Coca-Cola as an owner. The CEO took home 50. He spent less time working on Coca-Cola than the CEO did. So, is he working harder? By the definition that we did, yes.
Oh, the definition. Okay.
We've been playing the game wrong. If you want to outwork your competition, what you really should be doing is out-leveraging them. So who gets more done? We got one person who does 100 calls a day, another person who does 100 calls a day. The guy who has more skill. One guy makes 100 calls, another guy makes 100 calls. The guy who's better on the phone gets more output. Okay, let's say they're equal skill. They're working 8 hours a day, making calls. Oh, I forgot to ask the question. Who gets more work done? There's the answer. The guy that has the automated dialer that keeps his talk time the highest. Okay, same skill, same number of hours, and same automated dialer to maximize talk time. Now who gets more work done? The guy who has the best list. Okay, they've got the same list. The same skill, same dialer, 8 hours a day. The guy who's calling to the right season, the right time of day. Who wants to be calling selling shit during December if you're selling physical products? Who wants to sell on Black Friday? Of course. More leverage, same work, more output.
Leverage.
Okay, let's say all this stuff's equal. Now who's even? All right, what else do we have? Nice, he actually called it. The guy calling with the better offer. Now we've got the same time of year, same list, same offer, same dialer, equal skill, 8 hours a day. Now who's going to do it? It's got to be equal now, right? The guy who recorded his pitch and sent it to 10 million people.
Nice. I'm not doing that. I'm
now,
live with
to
you
push
right
this even
now.
further, what if the guy made 0 calls and didn't do anything? Who makes more against the best caller on earth? The guy who's got a team. He's got 15 dudes on the phone. I don't care how good you are. And if you're like, well, I think I could be 15, you can't be 1,500. I don't care who you are. Leverage. And that guy made 0 calls. I have more people calling for me today while I'm on stage. Leverage. The game is rigged, and you've been playing by rules that do not exist. If you want to make more money, you need to get more for your time. You need more leverage. And this should make sense because we all trade time for money. And I can prove this to you. You spend time every second of your life. You receive money over the time that you are alive. So, money divided by time equals rate of output. We are all paid dollars per hour. The reason I'm specifically saying this to this audience is that y'all get fooled all the fucking time by passive income. It's not passive. It's less active, but it is not binary. It is not active or passive. It's how active is it? So if you make one trade in the stock market, all the time it took you to analyze the deal, and every other deal you decided not to do, and then execute the trade, and then raise the money and do all the other stuff, that is all the time that it took you to do that. Now, after that point, you have increasing returns per unit of time.
I want to ask you, if I had a crazy good idea, say the idea had something to do with Twitch. What if it was something like, hey, I have a house, but I need 4 guys really good at this game, making this song and this kind of music, and this song and this kind of music. You each get your own room, but you have to bring your own equipment. And I will pay you to stay here and do it. If I was to do that, do you think that it would be, suitable for you? You think you would do it? I'm telling you, if someone offered me that and I had to bring my own equipment, I'd tell them, hey, I just have a laptop. I'm only good-ish at guitar. I'm really good at writing some lyrics that'll be sad or that'll be like really creative. If they're about it, then I'm in. I am in all the way. I will be part of a team under the same logo, creating to make money for everybody. But the dividends would have to be shared evenly for me. The question is, does the guy who brought them all together deserve more? It seems like in this society that they do. There's no other way to put it. It seems like they do. Only because, well, look at Warren Buffett. Doesn't even work at Coca-Cola, but owns enough dividends to make way more. But the big part about that is Warren Buffett owns everything in between that, because he's been started from back in the 50s or 60s, when he was a kid, he would invest in the proper things, go through the right channels, buy, sell, until now he owns Flying J, and he owns the trucks that deliver his gas, and he owns the trains that move that same fuel, and he owns a couple Coke that he sells in the store. I mean, it's not even an ownership thing, but it is. It's owning this much of a stock to turn a profit. It's a crazy good idea. But the limits do become real. And the cap becomes significant. Now another question is, in all this value of all the buildings, when do you think those currencies finally snap? Because if you watch the video we started with, gotta go back to it real quick. What is it? Let's go into our searches here. Hidden Secrets of Money, Episode 4. Mike Maloney explains the ownership of the Federal Reserve has, the Treasury, what they do to create the money, and he explains how eventually this system will collapse. But you gotta know, and he's also putting together a team himself. Mike Maloney is putting together a team to create a new way for the economy to work. Because before 1913, we were on a different standard without the money, without bills. Before it was just, you want a load of silver? Here, a silver piece for that water. Which they weren't selling water probably, but maybe they were, I don't know. It wasn't bottled. Not like that. But, you know, silver pieces for the things you need to live. A lot of people just living from hunting and gathering and crap like that. I know that there was buildings and infrastructure developing, and the industrial age, you know, really changed the world. But after 1913, it became bills that said, I have this many silver pieces in the bank. So you give your silver certificate to somebody, and they can go to the bank and take a piece of silver for your silver certificate. It sort of became that debt for debt type economy. And then Ronald Reagan, back in fucking 70s, whatever, took us off the gold standard, which meant every one of those bills became the main currency, and debt became the only available thing to Americans. And you know what's funny? The American dollar is one of the most used currencies in all the world, and its value depletes every single day. I don't know if that cap will break in our lifetime, but I'm going to tell you something that if we're going to get moving on this, it takes teamwork. I want to build a team of people that are inspired to do and spread good word and share the feelings. We're human. We make mistakes. To share the creative control, so hard, but doable. And imagine just spreading that word to so many people that everyone's encapsulated with the same feeling at the same time. And that will flow together. If I was in a crowd full of people and I was being inspired by someone upstairs, imagine I'm in a crowd full of people inspiring the person all the way up on stage. For people that are like-minded, that kind of thing can happen. And I do hope to find that one day. I hope to share that feeling with a load of people that are working together. It might seem a bit commune-ish, but people who are just trying to survive is what we do every day. To share a value of not being selfish. Just trying to be comfortable and free. To share love and raise a community. It does seem a bit out of reach at this point, and I hope that other people are inspired to do the same. I found these 3 things. You gotta listen to them all the way. Escaping the rat race. : what school failed to teach you about money. So inspiring. He talks about how we just got done talking about value and money. He talks about how it equates to what you're making and how consumerism takes over. Gosh, don't we all just want our bellies to be full every day? I spend my money on food. And it's not just about eating out every day. It's about being stuffed to the brim all the time. It is an addiction. And I'm working on it. The consumerism has failed me. I failed to over-trump it so far. If I can rein in my consumerism, I can begin to build even more quickly on just this live streaming thing and share my music with everybody. And I'm going to be putting more on YouTube. I'm sorry that it's been so late. I've been pretty busy. I work every day, and after work I come home and I share with you guys as much as I can. I have some videos that are in backlogs ready to be uploaded, and I'm going to go ahead and upload them. So, if you guys are feeling the same kind of, mentality, follow. I'll follow you. Even contact me on Twitch. I don't know if you can message on Twitch. Hit up my chat board. Why not? Get on to Twitter, X. I'll be on there too. And Instagram at AfterWorkCraft. Look up Escaping the Rat Race. What school failed to teach you about money? If you were inspired by this gentleman, look up How to Get So Rich. You question the meaning of making money. That's Alex Hormazi. How to Get So Rich. You question the meaning of making money. Pretty good. That's That's pretty good. And last but not least, this was 9 years ago this guy uploaded this video, but nonetheless, there's episodes called The Hidden Secrets of Money. Gold Silver with Mike Maloney. Go ahead and look up episode 4 of Hidden Secrets of Money and watch that until you can explain it yourself. I mean, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm not going to lie. I watched it for the first time today. But dang, that's true. It's like, it really is a bunch of zeros and ones being moved around in a giant circle around us. And we're just trying to get a piece of it just to survive happily. I mean, my consumerism has left me stuck in a trench, waiting to get out, trying to get out. I've worked every day since after high school. I tried college. I didn't ever get into debt over it. But my own consumerism to be in a comfortable car, to be in to have a good cell phone and a good connection has just kept me in a trench. And let's work on it together. Let's come up with ideas. Hit me up on Twitch and on X. Hit me up on Instagram. Let's talk about it. Let's build something together. Let's work together with ideas that we have. Because I'm going to tell you, I'm a creative guy. I'm a really creative guy. But I find myself stuck way too often just thinking. And don't we all? Like, we all either do too much of this or do too much of that. Share what you do too much of. And maybe you have value in that alone. And if we work together in that value, we're building the leverage to skyrocket something that we never thought we could do. From anywhere you're at. If you're from anywhere, I'm telling you, I'm from America. It's a capitalist society. You would say it's free. You would say it's not. There's ups and downs. We're all just trying to survive. I hope to hear from you guys, and I hope that we can get together for some more stuff. Collaborating and enjoying each other's company. Y'all have a good night. I will see you on the flip-flop later.